Hilchos Avodah Zarah, Perek Asiri. Laws of Idol Worship, Chapter 10. And today we're continuing the laws about relationships with non-Jews, idol worshippers, but we're taking it to a little bit of a different discussion, a little different topic. And this is basically going to be all about the mitzvah which says in the Torah, Lo Techanem. Lo Techanem has a number of different meanings. It means don't let them live in Israel. If we have certain levels of control, we have to make sure that the idol worshippers don't live in Israel. It also comes from Lashon Chen, grace. We're not allowed to give compliments or gifts to non-Jews. Chinam, it comes from the word chinam, which means free, no giving free gifts. So let's see how all of this is going to develop. Halacha Aleph, En kortin brit le'akum. Some texts say l'shiv'a amamin. We cannot make a treaty, a covenant, a peace treaty with idol worshippers, and some texts say just the 7 nations that live in Israel. It's a big argument if it applies to all idolaters or just to the 7 nations. In the older manuscripts, the one that were signed by the Rambam himself, it says all goyim, not just the 7 nations. The peace treaty would be that we'll let them live in peace and they can serve idols. That you cannot do. Peace treaties with idol worshippers cannot happen on their terms. They have to happen on our terms. It says you cannot enter with them into a treaty. Either they go back, they retract from their service of idols, or they get killed. The commentaries say this is talking about specifically B'shat Milchama, time of war. When the Jews enter Israel to go to war, the offer is either you accept Sheva Mitzvot B'nei Noach, either you accept the 7 Noahide laws, or we kill you. Typically, if it's not a time of war, you can't. It's not. The alternative is not death. The alternative is leave Israel. The Asur L'Rachem Alehem. We also cannot have any mercy on them. We can't show compassion to idol worshippers. Shene'emar v'lo techanem. This is the first translation of lo techanem. Don't show them grace. Lefichach, therefore, what is the practical translation of this? Im ra'a mehem oved o tovea banahar. If you witness an idol worshipper dying or drowning in the river, lo ya'alenu. You have no obligation to bring him up. Ra'ahu natui lamut. If you see him leaning over to die, lo yatzilenu. You should not save him. So you can't step in to stop a death. Aval la'abdo biyado. But to kill him by hand, or l'dachfol labor, to push him into a pit, b'chayotze bazer, or anything similar, asur. That's forbidden. Because he's not doing any war with us. The Rambam says clearly that when it's not time of war, you can't kill him by hand. So this is what's called in halacha lo ma'alim v'lo moridim. We don't take them out of a dangerous situation, but we don't put them in.
You stay passive.
You stay passive. Even according to the text that it applies to the 7 nations, some people argue and say not all the 7 nations. When the Jews entered Israel, there was one nation, Girgashi, that left. They were scared of the Jewish people. So some commentaries say it doesn't apply to the Girgashi. But the Rebbe says from the language of the Rambam, it sounds like it does. All 7 nations, no matter where, no matter when, we don't make any peace treaties with them. When do these words apply? If they're nations, either the 7 nations or all goyim, but if it's a Jewish traitor, aval hamosrin. Mosrin means informer, but it basically means a traitor, where you make somebody guilty in the eyes of the government or their property. Epikorsim Yisrael, and the apostates, the heretics among the Jewish people. Hayadin le'abdan bayad ulehoridan ad be'er shachat. When a Jew goes sour, it gets even worse. There's no passive. Take an active role. The din would have been, ideally, if we had full control, to be able to destroy them by hand and bring them down to the lowest levels of Gehinom. Because they would bother the Jewish people extensively, and turn the nation from after God. Some texts over here add in some words. Ki Yeshua hanotzri v'talmidav, like Yoshka, and his students, v'tzadok u'baitos v'talmidehem. And Tzadok and Baitos were 2 famous heretics. Their teacher was Antignos, who we learn about in Pirkei Avot. He said that you should only serve God with intention not to receive reward. So they said, how could that be? How could we only be serving Hashem for no reward? So they opened up their own branch of Judaism, and it created a lot of problems. Shem Rishaim Yirkav. The Rambam says the name of the Rishaim should be eradicated. The name was Tzadok and Baitos. Yeah, 2 students. Halacha bet. The Tzdukim come from them. The Sadducees, that's from Tzadok. Halacha bet, says the Rambam. Mikana talamed. From here we can learn. In other words, since the mitzvah in the Torah is about saving a non-Jew's life, that you stay passive, from here we can learn a new law. She'asur lerapot akum afilu b'sachar. That we also cannot be a doctor to heal idol worshippers, even for pay. But if you were afraid that they may do something to you in retaliation, or you were suspicious about animosity, you don't want to create bad feelings between you, then you can heal. You can be a doctor for pay, but still for free it's forbidden. The ger toshav, a ger toshav, which is the halachic term for a non-Jew who accepts upon himself the 7 Noahide laws, Sheva mitzvot b'nei Noach, ho'il v'ata mitzuveh le'achayoto, since we have a mitzvah clearly to help him live, to sustain him, mirapim oto b'chinam. So then we can heal even for free. Halacha gimel, real estate. What rights can we give idol worshippers to real estate in Israel? It says the Rambam, ein mochrim lahem batim v'sadot be'eretz Yisrael. We never sell houses or fields to idol worshippers in Israel. U'besurya, but in Syria, it's not exactly Syria, but it's kind of close by to Israel. Some of it does include modern-day Syria as well. It was an area that was almost annexed to Israel in times of old, so it had certain laws of Israel, but not other laws. So the Rambam says, "B'Suria mochrin lahem batim." We can sell houses, avalo sadot, but we cannot sell them fields, and we'll soon see why the sages were more strict about fields. That's about sale. So for sale in Israel, nothing. In Syria, only houses. When it comes to rent, little different laws. Umaskirin lahem batim be'eretz Yisrael. In Israel, we can rent them houses. Ubilvad shalo yasu shchuna, provided they don't make a neighborhood. What's a neighborhood? Ve'ein shchuna pachot mishlosha. A neighborhood is no less than 3 houses. So if you have 3 houses in the same area, or 4 or 5, you can't rent them all to idol worshippers because that creates a neighborhood. But either way, ve'ein maskirim lahem sadot. Again, we have a stringency on fields. We don't rent out fields in Israel. Ubesuria maskirin lahem sadot. In Syria, we could rent the fields. We're a little bit more lenient in Syria. Umipnei ma. Says the Rambam, umipnei ma hechmiru b'sadeh. Why were they more stringent when it came to fields? How come when it comes to sale in Israel, you can't even sell fields? And even in Syria, and when it comes to renting, also we're more strict about fields. Mipnei sheyesh bashtayim. Because when you give over the possession of a field to an idol worshipper, you lose 2 things. First of all, mafki'a min ha'ma'asrot. You revoke the status of ma'asrot. Any stuff that grows in this field now, because it's owned by a non-Jew, you don't have to give the appropriate tithes and truma to the Kohen and to the Levi. And also, v'noten lahem chaniyah bakarka, you're giving them place to live in our land, which is, we're going to see in the next halacha, is forbidden. So when it comes to a house, you're only doing the second part. No problem of ma'asrot. When you give them a field, you're creating an additional problem with agricultural laws. Umutar, says the Rambam, it's permitted, limkor lahem batim v'sadot v'chutza la'aretz. Outside of Israel, in the diaspora, you can sell them houses, you can sell them fields, no problem. Mipnei she'eina artzenu. That's not our land. If it would have been our land, then it's forbidden. Some commentaries say that even in chutz la'aretz, you shouldn't sell too much to non-Jews if it's in a Jewish neighborhood. Halacha dalet. Af b'makom shehitiru lehaskir. Even in places where the sages allowed us to rent houses, like in Israel, or renting fields, like in Syria, lo lebeit dira hitiru. They did not allow the rental for purposes of living there. If you rent a house to an idol worshiper for him to live, he's going to bring inside there his idols. It says you cannot bring an abomination into your house. So even when you're allowed to rent to an idol worshiper, you have to rent it with a specific stipulation that he can only use it for other things. Aval maskir lahem batim, you can rent them houses la'asotan otzar, to make them into a storage house. We also cannot sell to him produce or fruit, anything similar. If it's attached to the ground, you can sell it after you cut it, or you can sell it to him right before, as soon as all the grain is ripe, just before you cut it, on the condition that he cuts it, and then he harvests it. What is the reason for all of these prohibitions to sell? It says you cannot tichanem. Tichanem now has another translation. Lo titen lahem chanaya bakarka. You cannot allow them to dwell like machaneh, a camp. You cannot allow them to dwell on our land. Shim lo yeh lahem karka. If they won't have any land, if they won't own any real estate, yeshivatan yeshivat arayhi, it will end up being that they're going to live there only in a temporary way, which is what we're trying to accomplish. We don't want the idol worshippers to have a set permanent dwelling place in Israel. B'chein, another prohibition that we learn from these words, lo tichanem, is the following. Asur l'saper b'shivchan. It's forbidden to tell their praises. You cannot say something beautiful, complimentary about an idol worshipper. Va'afilu lomar, even to say, Kama na'eh oved kochavim zeh betzurato. How beautiful is his form? You praise his body build. Kal vachomer, how much more so sheyesaper b'shevach ma'asav, to tell the praise of his work. What a great thing he did. O sheyechabev davar midivreihem, or to show that you cherish something from among their things. Shene'emar, as it says, v'lo techanem. Chanem now has the translation of chen, grace. Lo yiyelahem chen be'einecha. They shall not have any grace in your eyes, because this would cause you to stick with him, and to learn from his bad deeds. The asur, another prohibition, it's also forbidden, to give them a free gift, a free present. But to a goy who accepted upon himself the Sheva Mitzvot B'nei Noach, him you can give presents. And we see this concept in the following verse. Shene'emar, as it says, La ger asher bish'arecha titnena va'achala. If you have a nevela, a carcass, which a Jew cannot eat, so you can give it to the ger in your gates, or machor lenachri, or to a non-Jew, you sell it. B'mechira v'lo b'nitina. To idol worshippers, you only sell, you don't give. To the ger toshav, you can give it to him. But to the idol worshipper, you only sell. Halacha hey. Although we're supposed to be very limited with the way we interact with idol worshippers, there are certain cases, what's called darchei shalom, to preserve the peace, that we're allowed to treat idol worshippers like Jews. For example, mefarnesim aniyeh ovdei kochavim im aniyeh Yisrael mipnei darkei shalom. Because of the ways of peace, we're allowed to support the poor people among the idol worshippers, together with the poor people of Israel. Ve'ein mimachin b'yad aniyeh ovdei kochavim. We also can't protest if the poor people of the idol worshippers come b'leket shichacha upeya, to collect leket, shichacha, and peyah. These are three gifts that every person who has a field has to give. Leket is any fallen stalks that you lose while harvesting. Shichacha is any stalks that you forget while harvesting. And peyah is the corner of your field which you have to leave. So if they come and collect this produce, you can't stop them. Because of the ways of peace. V'shoalim bishlamam. You can inquire about their well-being. How are you? V'afilu b'yom chagam. Even on their festival days, which we're worried, typically they're going to think that they're going to think they're gods. Even then, you can inquire about their well-being because of the ways of peace. However, ve'en koflin lahem shalom le'olam. You don't give them a double greeting of peace ever. It was very honorable to give somebody shalom, shalom, a double peace. To the idol worshippers, we don't do that. On a day of his holiday, though, even though you can inquire about his well-being, you shouldn't go into his house purposely to say hello. Mitza'o bashuk, if you find him in the marketplace, noten lo shalom, you should give him peace. Wish him well, b'safar rafa u'v'koved rosh, with a weak tone and with a heavy head. In other words, you don't want to show openly your affection for his holiday, but you should give him a greeting still to preserve the ways of peace. Says the Rambam, Halacha vav ein kol hadvarim ha'elu amurim. All of these things, all means everything we said about till now, not making a treaty, not selling them real estate, is only said ela bizman shegalu Yisrael leven ha'ovdei kochavim. It's only talking about the time when we're in exile among the idol worshippers. O sheyad akum takifal Yisrael, or where the idol worshipper's hand is stronger than ours. Gentile power reigns supreme. Aval bizman sheyad Yisrael takifal alehem. But if the Jewish people's hand is the strong one, it's even more stringent. Asur lanu lahaniach ovdei kochavim beinenu. There can be no idol worshipper living in Israel. Not for rent, not for nothing. Va'afilu yoshev yeshivat arai, even if he's just living there temporarily, or he's passing through for business. Lo ya'avor ba'artzenu, he cannot pass through our land. Ela ad sheyekabel alav sheva mitzvot shenitavu b'nei Noach, only if he accepts upon himself the 7 Noahide laws. Shene'emar, as it says, lo yeshvu ba'artzecha. Period. They don't sit in your land. Afilu lefi sha'ah, even in a timely manner. Again, v'im kibel alav sheva mitzvot. If he accepts upon himself 7 Noahide laws, harei ze ger toshav. Fine. Then he becomes a ger toshav and it's acceptable for him to live there. However, the Rambam adds that nowadays this can never apply. Ve'en mekablin ger toshav ela bizman shahayovel noheg. Only at the time that the Jubilee year was instituted, which is the time of the Bet HaMikdash, could we receive ger toshav into our land. Aval shelo bizman hayovel, not in the time of Yovel, en mekablin ela ger tzedek bilvad. We can only take full righteous converts. Therefore, it would turn out, according to many commentaries, that if today Jews were in charge of Israel fully, not like today's government. They still submit to Gentile powers. But I'm saying if we were actually in charge, since there's no Yovel, we can still not take a ger toshav. So everybody would have to be kicked out, only if you want to become a real convert. Some commentaries argue, they say, no, even today you can accept a ger toshav, but the bottom line is that certainly in the ideal world, Israel is only for Jews, it's artseinu, it's our land, and our land only.